Okay, today we're looking at another 10 by 10 personal shelter sized tarp, a waterproof tarp that's meant for ground shelter, impromptu shelter, survival shelter, or hammock cover, among other things. This one is the Reflect 20D from 2Go Systems. All right, this tarp comes in two sizes. I have two examples of this tarp here today, but they're both the same size. This is the Reflect 100, which is a 10 by 10 tarp, which it's a 3 meter by 3 meter. It comes out to just slightly over 9'7" by 9'7". Each side is about 9'7" long, give or take a couple of centimeters. He also makes this in a 10 by 12, which is 9'7" by about 12 feet long, apparently. I don't have an example of that. And we're going to get right to why I have two examples of this tarp today. But let's go over the specifications and details really quick first. This is a very interesting product. This is a little bit different than any other tarp I've shown you. And I've shown you a bunch of them now. This one, he was really thinking when he designed this. Now, first of all, it has a very special feature that we'll get to after we do things like count the tie-outs and have a look at the material that this is made out of. And also, the tie-out configuration is quite different than most other tarps. There are a couple of sill tarps out there that are catenary cut that have the kind of tie-out layout that this one has, but this one's pretty unique just for a square tarp. And the rectangular size version of this is also, the tie-outs are in exactly the same configuration, so very unique. He was thinking. This has 23 tie-outs. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to talk about this. There's a tie-out missing on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you've got 3 rows of 5 and 2 rows of 4, which give you these tie-outs in each quadrant of the tarp. So there are 23 tie-outs on the outside of the tarp. But when we have a closer look at this, we're going to find out that that's not entirely accurate either. The center seam tie-outs, they're doubled. There are 2 tie-outs on each reinforcement patch. And most of the tie-outs on this tarp are reinforced. The corners are reinforced, the quadrant tie-outs are reinforced, and the center seam tie-outs are reinforced. Now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tie-outs that are just stitched to the tarp. And they are in between the corner and the center all the way around the tarp. So center's reinforced, middle isn't. Corner's reinforced, the middle to the seam one isn't. The seam one is, this next one isn't, etc., etc., etc. Okay, now we're going to get to the very special feature of this tarp immediately. Immediately, we're gonna move the camera, and I'm going to show you something a little bit different right now. And we'll talk about why I have two examples of this tarp and why I've got a missing tie-out over here and why this is actually very, very cool. Okay, as you can see, this tarp is highly reflective. This is an aluminum coating on this side of the tarp. This is unique. You aren't going to find another nylon tarp that has an actual aluminum coating over it. This is a brand new idea brought to you from 2Go Systems, and this is very impressive. Now, you may notice that we moved a little bit. This is my second example of this tarp. I have 2 of these tarps. Both of them are the 10 by 10, and I did mention that he makes also a 10 by 12. Okay, so here's what happened. I pre-ordered my tarp, and he had a little bit of difficulty with the production of these. The company that he hired to do the sewing had some quality control issues. I waited kind of long after the pre-order, longer than I thought I'd have to, but he was very good about emailing updates as to what was going on. And I got my tarp, and I had it for a few days. I hadn't even taken it out of the shipping bag yet. And I got an email from him, and he says, inspect your tarp. We've had a couple of little problems, and I'd like you to have a close look at it and let me know if yours is okay or not. So I found that missing tie out and a little tear, a tiny little tear that, you know, I wouldn't have really minded fixing myself. And then there was a spot where the sewing machine had run off the, just kind of taken off across the fabric and left a bunch of needle holes, which also wouldn't have been a big deal to repair with a little silicone sealer or something of that nature. It wouldn't have been a big deal. But this is kind of an expensive item, so you know, in some respects that would have been pretty disappointing to discover that later. Well, he emailed me, asked me to inspect mine. I sent him a picture of the little tear and a picture of where the sewing machine had run off the seam and poked some holes where they didn't belong. And he says, well, hang on to that one, and I'm going to inspect a few of these and take care of these little problems that we have. And a few days later, I had a second one in the mail in perfect condition. Now, while we're here, because we're going to take a little break here in just a moment, on the inside of this tarp, we have, in all reality, we have 4 more tie-outs, but 2 more tie-out points on the inside of this tarp. I think that's very cool. It's useful for things like hanging mosquito netting, and then also this tarp is designed to be hung either way. You can either hang it with the green side out or the shiny side out, depending on if it's hot or if you're trying to stay warm. Okay, right there, we're going to take a little break. All right, we're holed up under this tarp now. A rainstorm rolled up, and you know, to prove that it's waterproof, the camera equipment is nice and dry. Some of these features that we were talking about before, get a good look at some of the reinforcement that's done on these tie-outs. This is fully taped, the seam is taped, and then the tie-out areas are taped on the center seam and on the corners. The next tie-out in, as we discussed earlier, is just tied to, is just stitched to the hem, and then the corner tie-outs are doubled over piece of material, or it's a second piece of material, and then that's fully taped and double stitched, and then the tie-out itself is double stitched to the corner. The inside tie-outs, this is, I'm really happy to see somebody do this. There where the double tie-outs were that we looked at earlier, on the inside of the tarp, on the shiny side, I should say, because this is reversible and this is why it's reversible, the ridge line has double tie-outs like the outside does, so it gives you a lot of nice options for hanging it even when the shiny side is out. Okay, this tarp has been with me for a couple of months. I've had it for just a little over 2 months, and I've tried this with the shiny side facing out when it was hot outside, and I haven't really tested this as a super shelter yet because it is summertime. But this is a nice aluminum coating and it's highly reflective. So that really leaves us with one less thing to do making a super shelter, and it's the hardest part of doing it, is putting up the mylar. So this should reduce the time and the effort involved in super shelter creation. And then some folks also just make a lean-to and put their fire out a couple or 3 feet from it. In the case of this tarp, you better be careful if you do that. If you're using it as a lean-to with just a fire a couple of feet in front of it, be very careful, because this is a silicone and polyurethane impregnated 20D nylon. So it's a sill hybrid. And of course, in previous videos, we've talked about the fact that sill is more flammable than polyurethane coated nylon. So, you know, be careful if you do this just a lean-to with a fire in front of it. You know, be cautious of the type of material that you're burning so you don't get big pops and spits from your fire that might end up on your tarp. And then, of course, you know, like they say with the tents that are made out of this sort of thing, you shouldn't really be cooking inside your shelter. You know, even your camp stove, even a bottle stove, it's really probably not a great idea to cook while you're under this tarp. You know, that's an activity for away from this material. Okay, we're gonna take a more portable and waterproof camera for a walk around this tarp. I'll show you how I've got it pitched, and then also how it's shedding water. And then we'll wrap this up after. Okay, we'll have a quick walk around this and I'll show you how I pitch this just for, so you can see some of these extra features that I'm so happy to see on this tarp. Again, just like the last couple videos, I just threw this over an old clothesline here for demonstration purposes. And then here, let's get right in here on his logo, and then let's look at this water all beading up on here. You know, it beads up real nice on this. It's a very lightweight fabric. This 20D, this tarp is a little bit heavier than some others, you know, in the same kind of material, this poly sill material. But it's because of that aluminized coating, and then the fact that he did such a nice job with these tie-outs. You know, they're reinforced, double stitched, and then this is a really nice thick heavy-duty webbing, like very similar to what AquaQuest uses. It's a nice heavy-duty stuff. Here's these doubled tie-outs. We'll get a close look at that. That's on the center seam. There's 3 of those, and then there's also on the inside. Those are replicated. And then here's how I'm just using some bank line here for this, but you know, normally I suppose you'd use a little bit bigger rope. But I just put them together and pulled this back, and then I used 2 of these quadrant tie-outs to make so much room that you saw while we were talking inside the tarp. And then I've got this back through the handle of a trekking pole, but you could just use a forked stick or whatever you want if you were going to set up like this in this sort of a lean-to. And then I've got this line goes to the trekking pole, and then to that left bottom quadrant, and then the middle line through that trekking pole handle and up to the center of the tarp. And then this is the right hand one through the trekking pole handle and over to the right lower quadrant. And so that's just a ton of room inside. That's what's really impressive. And I think I mentioned it, but again, this thing weighs 1.4 pounds. It's just shy of 1.4 pounds. So when we compare it to like the DD 3x3, for instance, when we compare it to that, I think that one's 1.8 pounds, and then the Etowah Outfitters BCUSA Ben's Bushcraft tarp, that one's about 1.8 pounds. I've got a photo here also to, I'm going to roll in right about here. This is a comparison of this tarp from 2Go Systems, the Reflect 20D, in the 10x10. This is the Reflect 100 against my DD Superlight tarp, and they're about the same size all packed down. Now he provides a very generously sized stuff sack, and we'll get a quick look at that here in just a moment, but it's about more than twice what you actually need if you want to make this a really small device. And here we'll look at the water beaded up on this. You know, it does a very nice job. Here's some of that reinforcing. This is the other center seam outside tie out. And then mentionable here is that he does these tie outs just a little bit different than most people. I'm not sure of my opinion of this quite yet. If you look at this, you'll see, if I can get this in focus, they take this piece of webbing and it's stitched to itself through the hem here, and then also this is reinforced. You can see that triangle, there's an extra piece of material there, and it's stitched down real nice. But they fold this piece of webbing over. It's folded over, so it's twisted, which makes it easier to use. You don't have to try to force it apart and get it apart, you know, when you're trying to put a tent peg or a piece of rope through it, but it reduces the surface area of where the pressure is when it is all tied up. That being twisted over centers the pressure instead of spreading it across the whole thing. So I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I've had this tarp deployed a number of times now and I haven't had any problems with it. So, you know, it may require a little more thinking on my part. It doesn't seem to be detrimental to it. And all of the tie outs are that way. They're all, see, it's twisted. They twisted this tie out. And it does, from a user standpoint, it sure is easier to get into here with a piece of string or you know, with a tent stake than, you know, ones that are just folded straight over. It's a lot easier to do that with this. Let's get a close look at one of these double tie outs on the center seam, and then here's how he's reinforced these quadrant tie outs. There's one in all 4 quadrants like this, and then that's an extra piece of material in a triangle, and then that's double stitched down. You know, in fact, this is box stitched down with an X through it. This is nicely reinforced. Yeah. Okay, let's have a quick look at this stuff sack, and then we'll wrap this up. Okay, the stuff sack is about 16 inches long, and it's about 6 inches wide. And if you fold that tarp, if you fold the tarp down, you know, smaller, you can fill about half of this. So when we compare it to like a DD 3x3 or a Ben's Bushcraft tarp or an Aquacust tarp, this is it can be quite a lot smaller, even though the stuff sack's just about the same size as some of those. So he gives you a nice generous stuff sack, and it's made of the same material as the tarp is. So you've got, you know, it's reflective, which, you know, doesn't do you any good as a stuff sack, but that's cool that you can, you know, that he's using the same material, and he provides a generous stuff sack for it. Now, when he shipped these to me, he had them kind of folded a little bit bigger, and they fit this, you know, they filled this up, or they seem to, but they compress down quite a bit. And I've already rolled in a picture to show you the difference between my DD Superlight, which is a very small package, and this, and they can be just about the same. So for those of you concerned about you know, pack size, and there you go, it's a very small package. I've got a DD 3x3 sitting here, but none of these tarps are stuff sacked right now. I might take a photo of those side by side as well and roll that in. Final thoughts on this product. This is unique and it's interesting. I've shown you one other reflective tarp, and it wasn't aluminized. This one's been aluminized. This has been dipped in some sort of aluminum coating and then left to dry, and apparently that takes a long time. It's highly reflective, where that other reflective tarp I showed you before was somewhat reflective. This is almost as shiny as a Mylar space blanket. It's very, very shiny. I don't know if our light has been good enough today to show you that, because we had this rainstorm roll up, and it's fire season here in Montana, so our air has been pretty thick with smoke. The sun hasn't peeked through very often in the last several weeks. But this is absolutely very, very well done. I'm just very impressed with what he's done. I had this out out here, both of these tarps pitched as tarp tents not too long ago. It was 101 degrees outside. And I tested the temperature inside both of them. I had the shiny side out on one and the green side out on the other, and I'd left them sit in the sun like that for 3 or 4 hours. There was a 6 or 7 degree temperature difference from the shiny side out to the green side out. The shiny side out was about 7 degrees cooler inside than the green side out was. So it does its job that way too, as far as protecting you from the sun and providing, you know, better shade. I was surprised by that actually, because the aluminum coating, you'd think it really wouldn't care, you know, which side it's reflecting from, as far as keeping the rays off of you, keeping that thermal reflective working. It seemed to me that, you know, maybe the tarp would absorb some of that, the green portion, but I was surprised. The shiny actually made a pretty big difference in the sun. Okay, we've gone over it. You know, this is a very well done product, you know, and the customer service was top notch. I'm going to go over that one more time. So I pre-ordered this and he shipped them out as soon as he got them. And before I even had a chance to inspect mine, I had it for a couple of days. I got an email from him and he said, hey, we've had a couple of these with problems. Would you inspect yours? And I found a couple of problems. I sent him a picture and he had me one out in the mail the same day and told me, oh, hang on to the other one, give it away, do whatever you want to with it. Don't bother shipping it back. You know, real sorry about that. But he took immediate care of me even before I knew mine had a problem. And that's some top-notch customer service. That is some personal service that, you know, a bigger company probably couldn't give you. And, you know, why would they? Why wouldn't they just wait for you to complain about something? Before I even had a chance to know I had a problem, he knew and fixed it. 2 thumbs up for the customer service. He is worth doing business with. Okay, so that's it. This has been a really good look, I think, at the Reflect 20D, and this is the Reflect 100. Don't forget, he also makes this in a 12 by 10 rather than just a 10 by 10. So those of you who prefer a little bit longer tarp, or some of you have really long hammocks, you might appreciate a rectangle that's 12 foot long. They are a little bit expensive, but they're very well done. I've shown you some other really expensive tarps that, you know, some of them were worth the money and some of them you had to think about it. This one I think is worth every penny. I do. Now, I got it on pre-order. I didn't pay exactly what he's charging now, but if I had to replace this tarp, I think I would. I think I would at the, you know, if I were to get this lost, stolen, or had a mishap with a fire, you know, because I'm an idiot or something. Yeah, if I had to replace this tarp, I think I'd pay what he's asking. I think I would replace it for that money. So drop by 2Go Systems, and I'm going to link a couple of things down in the description. I really do want you to look at the videos that he did on the thermal reflective. I think that's a good demonstration of how this operates. So if you're thinking about taking one step out of making a super shelter, a Morse-Kahansky super shelter, this is a great way to take a lot of that work out of it. And then, you know, if you're gonna use this as, you know, maybe an emergency bivvy, you know, just roll up in it or something for the thermal reflective, I think it'd be good if you went and looked at his, you know, so you'd understand how much reflectivity there really is. Today we used some different tent stakes than I've been using in the past. I'm going to link these on, this is an Amazon product, and if you buy it from my link, you know, I'll probably make 15 cents or something, you know, but you ought to check these out. These are 7 inches long about, and they're a triangle. And wow, all the ground around me right now is very wet. This has all been irrigated, and then we just sat through a rainstorm. So this ground's all very, very wet. And my smaller pegs that I usually use weren't working. And I bought these on a whim not that long ago, and they've been in my toolbox since then. I never tried them really before. I think I had one out one time for something, but yeah, these are awesome. They weigh about 12 grams a piece, I think, and I can't quite read. It's like Element Tools or Sighton Tools. I don't know. I'll link them in the description. Show you where they are on Amazon. These have held in this muddy, soft ground for me very, very well. And the camera wasn't on when the wind was blowing real hard because I don't have a little foam cover for my microphone today. You wouldn't have been able to hear me. So yeah, this thing put up with a lot of wind with these tent pegs, and you know, and it really kind of proved itself again today. This is a good tarp. So there you go. It has my recommendation, even at the money they're charging, or that he's charging. This is, you know, it's a little on the expensive side. It's over $100. So, you know, when I spend over $100 on just about anything, I have to think seriously about it. I'm going to say yes. If you've got the money to spend on this, I think it's very worthwhile. I think it's worth the money. Okay, that's it. I really appreciate you coming out here to my dad's farm for another one of these videos with me today. If this information was useful to you, please give me a thumbs up down there in that bottom right hand corner of this video. That YouTube likes to see that, and it helps the channel. You know, and if you've got any questions or comments, you know, leave them down in the underneath the video there in the comments section, and we'll, you know, I'll try to answer anything I can. Okay, that's it. I sure hope the rest of your day goes really, really well. Thanks, and bye-bye now.